What's up, guys? It's Andy from BC Builds. Here I'm doing a quick video on request or by request from Bill Kearney. A nice guy I actually met through YouTube. He's a fellow artist slash, I don't know if he's a builder or not, but I've done my research, and from the guy he's talking about, the guy knows what he's talking about. He doesn't personally make videos, he reviews other people's videos, but just by the way he talks, the guy knows what he's doing, and he's not a scratcher. The guy's legit. You know, I've done my homework, I checked it out, checked him out, you know. If you're seeing this, Bill K, I had to check. You know, nothing personal, but you know, from what you were saying, I could tell you were knowledgeable, but I had to do my homework. So it's just me. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say something unless I know for sure. Like Johnny Galt with his machines, I double checked and I made sure his machines are Chinese. There might be one or two frames he actually made, but good, you know, 70% of them are Chinese or prefabbed frames and parts. He just makes the coils. And I did my homework on that. Anyways, Bill K thought I should do a little video on machine basics. And I'm not going to get into depth in this video just because I don't have a lot of time. You see, I already have some shit set up. Normally, I wouldn't tattoo out of my house. I really don't condone it. I do tattoo friends here and close friends, considering the shop I work at is in New York City, well, Staten Island. I get off at exit 13, and I'm in New Jersey, central New Jersey. So it's about an hour and a half, hour and change. It all depends on traffic. So a lot of the clients that live around here, I tattoo here. I'm professionally trained. So we're not going to get into that aspect. But Bill thought I should you know, make a series of videos explaining a little more about tattoo basics. Well, the machine basics. I'm not going to teach you guys how to tattoo. I'm just going to teach you how to set up a machine and what the machine types are, what they should do. Like I said, I'm not getting into full detail in this video. I'm going to make a series of videos, or if you don't even want to watch mine, go on, you know, one of the most other knowledgeable guys I've seen is Underground Demographics. I'm subscribed under him, so if you guys want to know more and not watch my videos because I'm obnoxious or whatever it is, check out his videos. He does know a lot, and probably knows more than I do. But I know the basics. I know how to basically get the job done. So first off, different machine types. There's a bunch of machine types. You know, you have anything from you know, I'll just name some off. You know, you have a generic liner, you have a cutback liner, a long stroke liner. A cutback liner is a short stroke liner. It has a really short throw on it. You know, less than a dime. I don't have a cutback on me. I have one at work. But basically what a cutback is, it's when the contact post is behind the coil. That means it's going to have a really short front spring, and because it's so short and so far back here, you're not going to be able to get a super long throw, and it's going to be typically a shorter frame. This is a standard liner. It's not a long stroke. It's just a normal stroke, around a dime-ish. Even though the contact post is a little in front of the coil, this works out on this frame because it's a really short frame and a really short armature bar. That's why it works out. It's kind of a messed up geometry. I built the frame and I didn't think too much into it, but it ended up working out. So this is a liner. First off, everything I'm running at is going to be at 7 volts. You can see on my power supply. This is just a generic power supply. I had to do a lot of mods to it. The dual ports for liner and shader. I had to put another port on it for the clip cord in the back, the auto run. But if you guys don't want to do that, you could, the best power supply out there, in my opinion, is a critical power supply. That's what we all use at work, the shop. It's not sponsored, but we use pretty much all critical shit, you know, when it comes to power. But you guys should get something that reads out the speed, which is in hertz. That's the top one, where it says speed and 000 HC, that's hertz, you know, or you can say cycles per second. A hertz is when the armature bar goes down, up. Remember, when it comes back up, it flexes a little bit and then back to the resting point. Every time it goes down, up, and then back to the center, that is 1 hertz, or 1 cycle per second. You know, and when I run it, you can see it going up and down. And I run my liners It's 7 volts. They run around 135 to 150. And the duty anywhere from 45 to 70. It all really depends on how you have it set up. Usually I like to get in the 55-60 range, around what it is now. And this is a standard stroke liner, maybe a little bit longer. And you can see on this liner, it's got a pretty short armature bar, and it's pretty thin. On a liner, you would want a lighter armature bar, so it would move faster. The more weight you take off, the faster it moves. But remember, the more weight you take off, the less the magnetic pull has to cling onto. You know, so if you take too much metal off, you're not going to get a hard enough hit. So you got to find that balance in between. Light enough, but still enough metal for the magnetics, the coils, to pull on. So it's all really give and take. You know, this is a Walker style frame that I made. It's a short frame, very short. Alright, that's a liner. I'll plug this one in. We can do this one now. Or I'll go to this one. And then this is a shader. This is actually a Unimax Star. This is a first gen one. This one's pretty old. It's, I think, like 13 years old. This was given to me basically when I graduated my apprenticeship and became a full artist. My master, my mentor, whatever you want to call him, gave me this and a whole bunch of other machines to start off. This is one of his not earlier machines. Got it midway through his career from Wes, who owns Unimax. It was a personal gift, and that was handed to me. This is pretty much a generic shader. You can see here, it's got a little, around a nickel gap, maybe a little more. It's got, you see on the shaders, you have a longer front spring. It gives it a little more give. And you can see also see on the armature bar on the shader is a little bigger than the liner. It's not always longer. The length is really determined by which size frame you have. The geometry, which I'll go over later, but it's a little thicker and a little heavier. So it won't move as fast, but you know, still fast enough, but it'll get a little more pull. And I'll run this for you. Ooh, wrong one. You can see the gap right here. Watch when this moves, the needle post, or where you put the nipple and the needle bar attaches to. You can see a V in between it. You don't want a huge V. This is a little longer of a stroke. This is a generic shader. You can do gray wash with this, or you can do color shading. It does have a heavy enough armature bar, and it does hit pretty hard. It's 7 volts. This is running. This is a little faster of a shader. It hits a little harder. It's 118 cycles per second, or hertz. It's 7 volts. Like I said, it's got a longer front spring and a little heavier of an armature bar. And it's got 10 wrap coils, which means, well, 10 layer, that's what it is. 10 layers. You can see they're thicker than these, which are 8 layer coils. Typically 8 layer, less wraps. You need less power to power them. There's less resistance. You can use 8 wraps on a shader. That's not a problem as long as they're wrapped tightly and correctly. The only reason I really use 10 wraps on my shader is if you're pushing bigger needles, 15 magnums or up, which is one of these, which I'm about to use. You need a little more power. The 8s kind of struggle to generate. They will, but you'll have to pump the voltage up, and it'll overwork the coils and the capacitor. And also the capacitors, I forgot to say, are very important. On a liner, you would typically want a 22 UF or a 33, which is a smaller capacitor. It won't hold, it's like a battery. It won't hold as much of a charge, but it'll disperse it a lot faster. So it'll make the machine move a lot faster. That's what you want for a liner. You want the liners to run fastest out of any of your machines. That'll give you those nice consistent bold lines or nice blood lines, you know. Then on a shader here, this one's 47 UF. It's a little bigger and it'll hold more of a charge, so it's a little more powerful, but because it's bigger, the charge in it disperses a little slower, so the machine won't run quite as fast. And I could run a 47 on a liner and it would work fine, and I could run a 33 on a shader. Really, what makes the machine good is a combination of everything: the coils, the capacitor, the geometry of the frame, such as where the contact post sits relation to the center of the front coil, and the size of the armature bar. Everything is a factor. Given I could change one of these factors out, I could put this contact post behind the coil and leave all the other stuff the way it is and still make it run correctly. But for really good machines, you want everything to be correct. And given this is just a ballpark, people run their machines differently and have different opinions. This is how I run my shit. Now you saw the shader. Now we're going to go to a lighter shader, which also has 10 wrap coils. Normally I wouldn't run 10 wrap coils on a light shader because you don't want it to hit as hard. But like I said, I use a lot of big magnums, 15s and up. Round magnums, curves, and it takes a little more power to push them. Not so much the 15, but just in case I need that extra power, I go with the 10 wraps on my light shader, or at least this one, just so I don't overwork the coils. I don't have to crank the voltage up too much. And this, I'm not for sure, for some reason this machine won't read on my power supply. It won't tell me the speed or the hertz, but this one runs around 108. It's got a little smaller of an armature bar on it than the all-purpose shader, but it's a little bigger than the liner. It's a little heavier, so it has a nice hit. And this is my gray wash shader. Well, one of them, one of many. You want this to be fast enough to get consistent color and gradients, the value between light and dark shading for gray wash, a light shader. But you also, you also want it to be light, because even if you're using a really light gray wash, like a light gray ink, if it's running really fast and really hard, it's going to push enough of it in there and give you a darker shade than you want. So you want it to run where it hits hard enough to put that ink in there consistently, but nice and soft so you can get those nice soft tones. And you can see the geometry on this frame is similar to the other shader. The contact post is out in front of the coil. It's got the longer front spring on it, which is an 18 gauge, and then an 18 in the back. This one is 20 gauge in the back and 18 gauge in the front. The thicker spring in the back will force it to run a little faster because there's a little more tension. My gray wash shaders usually take my time. They still run almost as fast, 5 or 10 hertz slower. But that's why I use an 18. It won't have as much tension in the back, and it'll run just a little slower, but it gives it enough tension to run fast enough and hit hard enough. I want this to run nice and soft. With a gray wash shader, you can use 8 wrap coils as long as you're not going over a 15. And in the gray wash shader, I either use a 33 UF or a 47 UF. Alright, I'm going to take that out. And now I'm going to show you a color packer, it's in the shader category. It does all the things a shader does, except for it hits a lot harder, and it's a little faster than a normal shader. You can hear it. What makes this different is, one, it has more powerful coils. Even though these are 10 wrap coils, but it's got a shorty stilted coil in the back, you think it'd be less powerful than the full 10 wraps on this one. These just happen to be really powerful Ringmaster coils that hit harder than any other coils I've ever used. So if I wasn't using Ringmaster coils in some other brand, I'd use a full 10 wrap in the back. But these, what it does is the front will hit harder than the back does. This one will pull and give more power to the front. And because there's a little less power in the back, it gives it like a slappy waving motion. That's how you you don't have to, but that's how I like my color packers to hit. It forces it to give a slappy effect instead of just up and down, kind of like this, and it forces it to hit harder. This has got an 18 gauge in the back spring, and so it runs fast. It's got a little more bend in it, and it's got more angle on the back shelf. You know, the spring saddle back here is angled, and then I also have a bend in the spring, so it's got a lot of tension. It's got around the same tension in the back as I run on my liners, around 450 grams. But the difference on this is it has a really light front spring, which in turn, the lighter front spring will slow it down. So if I had a stiff front spring, this would run just as fast as my liner does. But I have a really soft, long 16 gauge spring on the front. And what that does is when you see when I let go of the armature bar, the spring continues to bend. So this will go up. That'll give it a longer stroke. Let me take the grommet off for you guys so you can see a little better. Look how long that stroke is. Look at the V between the bar. That's typically what you'd want in a color packer. And you can see this is at 7 volts. This hits incredibly hard, and it's almost as fast as my liner. This is running at about 128 hertz cycles per second. Now, given if you're new to this, I'd run yours a little slower. I just like to color my shit fast. But in principle, you want your color packer to hit a little harder, and by doing that you have 10 wrap coils. And see this armature bar, how it's oddly shaped and it's got a bubble in the front, and look how wide it is. This has got more mass, so there's more metal for the magnets, the electromagnets, which are coils, to pull onto. So the more mass in your armature bar, the harder your hit's going to be. Such as this is, and I dropped it. This liner armature bar, there's less metal, so it's not going to be as hard of a hit, but it'll be faster. Given that this is a heavy armature bar, it slows it down. That's why I put a lot of tension in the back to keep the speed up. But if you have low tension in the back and a heavy armature bar, this thing's going to run super slow. You know? And if you put a stiff spring on the front, you're going to get a really short throw, and that's not what you want in a color packer. This is a medium length frame, which I use on all my shaders and my color packers. Color packers, you want a longer frame. That's from the edge of the spring saddle, which is right here, to the center of the tube. That's the length of your frame. This is, in comparison, you can see it's much longer than my liner, because liners, you want a shorter stroke, and on a color packer, you want a longer stroke. And shaders, you want in between. You want a medium length. And I'm not sure what the actual measurements are. You guys are going to have to do your homework on that. But the longer the length of the frame, the more up and down throw. This is throw. The up and down of the armature bar, the needle bar. The longer the frame is, the longer the armature bar, the more throw you're going to be able to get. So a color packer, you're not going to be able to use a really short frame from here to here and get a long throw for a color packer. If you like a short throw color packer and you can make it work, then go for it. But if you want a color packer like this, you have to have a medium or long frame. Now, if I wanted to make this into a liner, it'd have to be a long stroke liner. Well, not necessarily. There's ways around that. But if you're not experienced, if you wanted to make this frame into a liner frame, you could, because you can drop the contact post back, but it'd still be a longer stroke liner. If it was a shorter frame, it'd be a short stroke liner. And then there's also different types of springs. You have one-piece springs and two-piece springs, which you can see here, front spring and a rear spring. The point in a two-piece spring is so you can have two different gauges. This one's 18, and then the back is 20. That's how you change the speed on your machine. The back creates the tension, which will create how fast it will hit, but also the front spring, which is considered, what I was taught, is the timing spring. The stiffer the front spring, the faster your machine's going to run. The more flex it has, the slower your machine's going to run. And then there's also springs that are one piece. This is all one 18 gauge, or actually no, this is 20 gauge, sorry. This is a 20 gauge, it's meant for a faster shader. You see how long it is. And I'll put them over here so you can see better. And then this is also a 20 gauge, but this would be used as a liner because it has a shorter front end on it. The back end is the same, almost, but it has a shorter front end. Even though they're the same gauge, this one's going to have less flex because it's got a shorter front spring. And the way you realize that is if you're ever on a diving board, a shorter diving board is going to have a lot less flex. Like if you go to a public pool, they have these 15-foot long diving boards and you can fly 15 in the air. You're going in your friend's pool in his backyard, he's got one of these short diving boards and you can only jump a couple of feet up. That's how you look at it. So even though these are both 20 gauge, this has got a really long front spring, more area to bend, so it's going to be softer. And then this is short and that's harder. I'm running out of video or space and I'm running out of battery, so I'll make another video tomorrow. That's it for tonight, guys. Bill, if you're watching this, send me a more detailed message on what exactly you want me to put up and I'll gladly do it. Thanks for your time, guys. Gotta do this tattoo.